I don't know about you, but there are few things that are as stressful for me as my kids saying, "Mom, what are we having for dinner?" when I haven't taken the time to figure out what we're having for dinner. And this question usually comes right at the time that we should be eating, and instead I'm trying to figure out what we're going to make. I find this extremely stressful, and I don't always respond well. And I have found that by doing a little bit of meal planning, I don't really do a whole lot of meal prep, but by doing a little bit of meal planning, I can at least reduce a little bit of that pressure and anxiety for myself. And so I want to share with you today some of the tips, the things that I do each week for myself to meal plan before I'm doing the meal planning and during my meal planning process. And the first thing that I'm going to share is actually a tip that came from a very good friend of mine, and it has been a game changer in how I think about meal planning. And that is to, before you do any kind of meal planning for the week, open up your calendar. The number of times I planned this grand meal on a night when I had a late meeting, one kid had rehearsal at this end of town and another kid had practice at this end of town, and all of those three things overlapped, and my husband was out of town and I was doing all of this by myself. I can't count the number of times something like that happened. And by looking at my calendar and having a sense of what is required of us that night, who has what plans, who needs to be where, how much time am I actually going to have to prepare dinner tonight, it helps me make a more realistic plan. So that is tip number one. Look at your calendar. And not only look at your calendar for what events you have going on, but look at your calendar to figure out how you might feel at the end of the day. Are you going to be exhausted and not have the bandwidth or the time for preparing something elaborate? Is this maybe a better night for you to consider takeout if that is, on the table for you? So it can help you understand the complexity of your evening plans and the time that you have available, and to think about how you might feel at the end of that day and whether, again, you have the bandwidth to actually prepare something. So the other thing, tip number 2, before you start your meal planning, is to eat leftovers and eat what's in your fridge. Clean out your fridge as much as possible. I really love going grocery shopping when I have an empty refrigerator. I don't feel like I'm wasting food. I don't feel like I'm wasting money. And I feel like we are doing our part to use the food that we purchase. And I feel better when I get to do that. So tip number 2, eat leftovers, eat the food that you have in your fridge, clean out your fridge, and maybe even physically give it a little wipe down, saves you from having to do it in the end. Number 3, before you consider your planning, take stock of what you have for fresh foods. What vegetables do you still have from your purchase last week that need to be used this week? So that you can think about A, not buying more of those, and B, using them in a recipe. Again, it helps you reduce waste, and therefore you're saving some money as well. So take stock of those fresh items. Number 3 is to take stock of what you have in the pantry. No need to buy a whole bunch more canned beans or pasta if you are already, full of those in the pantry. So take stock of those fresh items as well as any pantry staples that you can use to craft a meal. So before grocery shopping, those are the tips or before meal planning, those are the tips. Once you've got a sense of all of that, here are some of my tips and strategies that I use while I'm thinking about what meal plan I actually want to create for the week. So in addition to looking at my calendar and thinking about, again, how much bandwidth and how much energy and how much time I will actually have for any given meal, I tend to think about food categories. One of the goals I have for our family is not to eat the same thing each night, right? And I really try to mix it up. But knowing that Tuesdays are going to be pasta nights can help to give me a starting point for thinking about what kind of meal I might like to serve. It can help my kids know Tuesdays we have pasta, and it's going to be some type of pasta, some version of a pasta meal, but they'll know that's what's coming. And it actually, by narrowing the scope on any given day, it actually helps you be a little bit more creative because you have to search for new recipes within a defined category. So think about meal categories that you might like to have often or like to rotate through, and can be easy, again, to use the food that you have in the fridge and the pantry around some broad theme. So in addition to thinking about what kind of nights are going to be extremely busy where you may have less time or bandwidth for cooking, think about the nights when you might actually have more bandwidth for preparing food, and think about how you can double or make double of a recipe or make extras of a portion of a recipe. If you're planning to have rice one night, as an example, make more that you can keep in the fridge and turn into fried rice later in the week, as an example. So using time you have to double batches, put in the freezer or the fridge for later, use for lunch, or to double portions or parts of a food, that is really useful when you have the time to do it. So be thinking about how you can use portions of one food later in the week. Also consider what you can make ahead. If Saturday you have very little going on and you like cooking, maybe you want to make some things ahead of time. And that can reduce the burden later in the week on those nights when you're feeling pinched for time. I absolutely love Food 52's cookbook, A New Way to Dinner. It helps you. The whole goal of this cookbook is to identify meals, and it walks you through how to prepare everything on the weekend and how to then reheat later in the week. And it is a fabulous way to think about planning meals during those busy weeknights. So the other thing, and this is sort of related to planning a meal category, but plan a general meal and then think about specifics later. So what do I mean by that? I am thinking, again, that we'll have pasta one night this week, but the specifics of what goes into that, I might wait to actually make that plan until I can go to the grocery store and see what's freshest or see what we have left over come Thursday, Friday. We usually do our shops on the weekend. Or I visit the farmer's market on Wednesday, midweek, and see what they have, and then get more specific with my planning around that. The other thing, another tip to consider during your planning is to leave some flexibility. So leave an empty night. Leave an empty night that you can either move a meal where you maybe miscalculated how much time you'd have to prepare, and you can be like, nope, I'm going to put that over there, and tonight we're going for takeout. Or you get home and you're just too tired to cook. Or everybody decides they want to have takeout. Or a friend invites you last minute to dinner. Leaving room in your meal planning for last minute events and last minute changes like this reduces the stress that you're not following the plan precisely, the stress that you might be wasting food, wasting money as a result. And it just kind of gives you some wiggle room to make the meals work for your day and your mood. All right, should I try to recap all of those? Let's see if I can remember them. Before you start making your meal plan, open up your calendar, eat leftovers, and look at what you have in the fridge. Give your fridge a little wipe out if you're feeling it. Take stock of fresh items and take stock of what you have in the pantry. So you have a little sense of what you have on hand and what should be used so that it doesn't go to waste. While you're planning, use broad meal categories rather than being super tight and specific. It will help you identify actual specific meals you might like to make and be a little bit more creative. Take stock of time when you have the ability to double meals or double portions of meals that you can use later in the week, and then be mindful to actually plan meals around those extras. Consider food items or entire meals that can be made ahead. Think about when you might have time to do that. Plan general meals, not specific recipes, again, to help you make use of what you have on hand, things that are looking like they may go bad. And plan a flex day and or a takeout night that you can move around as you need, because we all know that last minute changes happen. There you have it. Those are the things I actually do in our house when I am doing my meal planning. I hope they're useful.